Alright, picture for a moment I wake up tomorrow and I've lost all of my gains, heaven forbid. Here's how I would get back to jacked as fast as possible, knowing what I know now from a completely blank slate, which by the way, was my starting point before I got into this lifting game. So for those who don't know my story, I was the typical skinniest kid in your class at school guy. I was under 55 kilos at the age of 16, height of about 5'9". This photo is from before I started lifting. I started very, very young. I was 14 in this photo, and these are my mum's size 26 skinny jeans. So if you're a skinny guy, you can relate to literally fitting into your mum's skinny jeans. Mate, I totally feel you. I'm now a professional natural bodybuilder, and I've managed to build over 20 kilos of muscle onto my frame. I also run Team Locked In coaching, and I help guys probably just like you do exactly this. So there's 6 key pillars I've identified that have been instrumental in my change, and if I was in the position starting all over again, these are the 6 things I would start with, starting with belief. Because at the end of the day, to go from here to here, it's not complicated, right? You just need to do the right workouts and eat the right food consistently for long enough and go to bed on time early, essentially, right? But the reason that we might not be consistent with that is because we don't have the belief. What I commonly deal with clients is a feeling of like, can I actually do this? You know, when you realize sort of what is required. Oh, I need to work out 3, 4, 5 times a week. Every week, consistently. Yeah, you can have a couple of weeks off a year kind of thing, but you have to be, for the most part, extremely, extremely consistent. That's a deep feeling that a lot of guys have. Another is it worth it? Is it worth putting in all of this effort? All I can say for me is that it absolutely was worth it. And if you are thinking like this, I would encourage you to go and watch more transformation type of content. So this is a guy called Tom Beckles, I think, super famous skinny guy transformation, and look at how thin he was and how jacked he is now. He's a young guy as well, a lot younger than me, so his transformation was, I think, only 3 years maybe between these 2 photos. Go and look at someone like David Lade as well, and you'll soon start to realize what is possible, even if you are starting from an extremely, extremely skinny, no muscle frame like I was, like it looks like David Lade was. Obviously with David Lade, I think it's come out he was maybe fake natty the whole time. But anyway, do take, I guess, solace in my transformation at least, and you know that I am a verified natural pro bodybuilder. I get drug tested on the regular. Also, if you are not coming from where I came from, like truly skinny, you're more maybe skinny fat, so to speak, and I hate that word, but you might have been in Henry's position where you could definitely do with more muscle, and you do have a bit of a layer of body fat covering the abs as well. Just know what can be achieved in 18 weeks of really locking in, and here's another example as well. Harley went through a full bulk and then a full cut. This took 18 months. The point is, it doesn't matter how long it's going to take. Imagine you go from here to here. Imagine you go from here to here. Is it worth it? It absolutely is worth it every single time. So what you need to do to help you build that belief is outwork your self-doubt. If you're an Alex Hormozi fan, you'll know this quote. It's an Alex Hormozi quote. I say outwork your self-doubt long enough to get some wins, to get some momentum under your belt, because those wins, that momentum is going to be extremely, extremely motivating. I'm very, very lucky that when I got into the gym, I had a few friends who were doing it too, and although I was extremely skinny and I was so weak that I could not even bench the barbell, the 20 kilo barbell, I remember not being able to do that. I had to get a friend to deadlift a 15 kilo or I think a 35 pound barbell up onto me when I was lying flat on my back on a bench, and then I would be bench pressing that. Like, that's how skinny and weak I was. But I think at least I was so lean at the time that, you know, the first sort of muscle pump I got, I thought, holy heck, like, this is amazing. I loved it from day one. I'm very lucky that it did not take me long to get some wins. But for you, it might take you a while. You have to do this. You have to outwork your self-doubt long enough to get the wins, because that's going to get you the momentum, that's going to give you the motivation, and you're going to be able to see this through. You need a training program. You do not build muscle from doing the perfect workout once. You build muscle from doing a good enough series of exercises over and over and over and over and over and getting stronger via progressive overload. If you don't have a training program, just send me a message on Instagram. You can see I don't have a massive following, so I do see all of the messages. This is the training program that I will send you. It's completely for free. It's not in my app, of course. It's just a spreadsheet, but it will be plenty to get you started. It's not too important which training program you follow. So I'm going to talk from now about sets and reps and exercises and training splits and all of that. The most important thing though is that you pick a program and stick with it. So if you don't like the look of my one, pick another one, but make sure you stick with the same training program and don't keep program hopping or jumping from program to program or changing your exercises every week, because then you're just restarting the process of getting stronger all over again. There's a term in economics, ceteris paribus. It's a Latin term, but it's probably used in other fields as well. I learned it in economics in university. It means all else being equal. So in mathematics or economics, it's a really nice term because it means when we hold all of these variables constant and move just this one, what happens? All else being equal. This is why you have to follow a training program, because if you're not building muscle and you're constantly chopping and changing, you have no idea why you're not gaining muscle. You don't know whether it's your diet, whether it's your sleep, whether it's the training program itself, whether it's too much volume, not enough volume, too high intensity, not enough intensity. You've got no idea. So you need to stick to a program for long enough to see it through. And what you're going to find is, for the most part, unless it's a really terrible program, it's actually going to work and you're going to see some pretty good progress from that. Let's move on to your training split. Here's the 3 I like. If you can train 4 days per week, it's upper, lower, upper, lower. Not necessarily back to back. It might be upper, lower, rest, upper, lower, rest, rest, or some variation of that. That's a really good one for most people. If you can't train 4 days per week, I do believe you probably can see good progress on 3 days per week. I am yet to coach someone who truly got good results on 3 days per week personally. I haven't seen it happen in my life, but there's lots of bit like Kino Body, for example. I believe he trains 3 days, maybe even 2 days per week full body, and pretty awesome physique. You know, would he have better progress if he trained a little more? I do believe so, but the difference between 3 workouts and 4 workouts per week is probably not massive. My personal favorite is 3 upper body, 2 lower body sessions per week, or if you have underdeveloped arms like I do, then we split it up. You have a chest and back day, then you have an arms and a delts day, and that's so that you're not just training arms at the end of every upper body workout and then not putting full effort into them like I have been guilty of in the past, and then you hit an upper and a lower. Obviously you factor in your rest days there. Now, what we know is the time course of muscle protein synthesis. So how long are your muscles growing for after a workout? This is a rough graph. It's not, don't take it with a grain of salt, essentially. And you can see here, for an untrained individual, they'll do their workout and their muscle protein synthesis will peak around 18, call it 15 to 20 hours post-workout. It will then dip, but it's still pretty elevated. Look at this, it's still above 50%, even 30 hours, 40 hours. So we're getting into 2 days past the workout here. For a trained individual, the time course is much shorter. So we're looking at 5 hours by the 10-hour mark, by the 20-hour mark, by the 1 day mark. It's almost close back down to baseline now. So this is why you should not be following a body part split. So if you're doing a chest day, back day, arm day, shoulder day, leg day, for example, you are not maximizing your muscle protein synthesis response from training, and you will get better results by moving to a higher frequency training split where you train each muscle at least twice per week. Now, whether 3 times is better than twice, I don't think anyone can confidently say based on the current literature, but you need to be training each muscle at least twice per week. This was huge for me. I used to do a body part split, and I would always wonder why certain areas were lagging and they were just completely understimulated. I would train them on a Monday, they'd be ready to go again by Wednesday, but I'd be waiting until the following Monday to train them again. Do not be using that approach. Now, why have I put this one in? Okay, we're getting into exercises now. I forgot to put exercises as a slide. So I want to preface this by saying this was me at 21. So the photo you're seeing at the very start, I'm 30 now. So I made
pretty decent progress by the age of 21, right? I do think that's a pretty flattering photo, if I'm being honest. But I'm going to tell you essentially that you should not be focusing on barbell exercises, which is going to sound, what's the right word? Hypocritical, because I built up my physique using exercises like the barbell bench press in particular. So I had a pretty decent physique. I believe I'm 23 years old here, and for all intents and purposes, like, awesome. You know, I think most guys would be happy with this physique. I was very happy with this physique at that age. Here are the exercises I used to absolutely spam: barbell bench, incline dumbbell press, pull-ups and chin-ups, barbell squat. Now, I probably did train the whole body by now, you know, so I was training hamstrings. I just wouldn't have really had too much of a thought process around really focusing on them or progressively overloading any hamstring exercise, for example. And I also did massively neglect my back. So what you can't really see in this photo here is, yes, you can see I've clearly developed a few more areas, like the delts have really come through, the arms are a bit bigger, the chest actually is a fair bit bigger, but what has significantly improved from the age of, say, 23 to 30 is my back. It is this here, and you can't really see that through that photo. I don't have too many photos of my back from that age, unfortunately. The key factor with the exercises, right, choosing which exercises are going to fill up your training split, is what is the limiting factor. So when you finish your set, why did you stop the set? Did you stop the set because your wrists were sore, or because your shoulder joint hurt, or did you stop the set because the muscle reached its failure point? One thing I've really transitioned away from is, I used to be quite obsessed with the barbell lifts, right? The barbell bench, barbell squats in particular. And yep, you can see I did build a pretty decent physique using that approach, but there absolutely were gaps, and those are the gaps that I'm filling in at the moment. I now use almost exclusively machines with a little bit of dumbbell work, and if I'm using a barbell, it is for a Romanian deadlift, and that's pretty much the only thing I use a barbell for at the moment. It took me a while to make this transition. I do think it's for the best for me now, though, because when I do a barbell bench press, I'm sort of at a point in terms of my strength that my chest actually maybe is not the limiting factor. Whereas when I do a machine like this, I know for a fact that my chest is the thing that makes me stop the set. So I know I'm taking my chest, those fibers, all the way to their failure point, essentially. It's been a psychologically difficult shift, because I love the barbell bench press, of course. But what I've sort of had to do in my mind is, the validation I would get from getting stronger on those big barbell exercises, I've slowly transferred over to these exercises. So for me, for chest now, I'm predominantly focusing on a machine chest press. And now, you know, I'm doing 3 plates and then a 3/4 plate. So 3 20s and a 15, or 3 45s and a 35 here. And it's cool. I get personally just as much satisfaction out of progressively overloading this exercise as I would have the bench press in the past. For quads, as an example, I no longer do barbell squats, and I would not be doing barbell squats again. If it is my goal to get as jacked as possible, as fast as possible, I'll be doing strictly stable exercises which allow me to take my quads to failure, make sure they are in fact the limiting factor. This is such a beautiful way to train as well, right? So when you think about, like, let's say we're doing hack squats, I'm going to come in, I'm going to do my seated hamstring curls to failure, I'm going to do hack squats. Now my working weight is going to be 4 plates per side. I'm in that 5 to 10 rep range here. The way that I warm up is I do no plates, right? So just the carriage, then 1 plate aside, then 2 plates aside, 3 plates aside, and then I'll do 4 plates aside for my working sets. I don't need to do this 15-minute mobility routine, stretching out my hips and my back and my glutes and everything that I used to have to do when I was obsessed with barbell squatting over and over and over and over and over. So this is a very, very ergonomic and time efficient way to train when you're actually making sure that the target muscle is the limiting factor by using these stable exercises. All right, let's talk sets and reps. I would be starting off with 2 sets of 5 to 10 reps to failure on absolutely everything. So what is failure? Failure is the point where you are pushing on the weight and you can no longer achieve another full repetition. Let's watch this whole set. I want you to notice the control on the way down. Even as the set is getting hard, I'm still controlling it, not bouncing out of the hole. And here we go, push, pushing, pushing, pushing. And eventually I decide I'm not quite going to make it there. So I failed that rep. That rep was failure. Now, you've got to think when you're choosing, let's talk about the number of sets first. There's a lot of different research around how many sets you need to optimize muscle growth. I would say you always want to start on the low end wherever possible and only progress if and when you know that you need to. We always want to get your form in check first and then your intensity. So your intensity means your proximity to failure, your ability to train to failure. And it's not easy. It's very difficult. It is very mentally demanding because you have to push through the discomfort. If we train close to failure with bad form, then that's just ego lifting and you're really risking injury. If we add volume, which is how many sets you do, without really cultivating that ability to train to failure or very close to failure, then that's called junk volume. And that's why you'll see some people in the gym who are clearly in there or have been in there for years and years and years, and yet they never change. They always look the same. It's because they are exercising, they are not training. Training means you go in with a plan, you know exactly what you got last week, you have the program, you're pushing close to failure, you're beating your previous self. If last week you got 100 kilos for 5 reps and then 6 reps and then 5 reps, set 1, set 2, then you know you need to either match or beat that this week. That's training. Whereas exercising is just going in and doing a bit of everything. And a lot of people just fall into that trap. And then when they're not growing, they think that they need to do more volume. And so they start doing more sets, less rest time. And whenever we increase the volume, we naturally sacrifice the intensity. But the intensity comes before the volume. So that's why I say start off with 2 sets. Only go higher if you're really sure that you need to. You're sure your form is great. You're sure you're really pushing that muscle close to failure, but you've really noticed it is not growing. And I do think that there is a case for adding volume for particularly stubborn muscle groups. So for me, for example, I have terrible calves. This is actually quite a flattering angle because it's from the seats of the stand looking up at me on the stage. So it's somewhat of a flattering angle, but I have terrible calves. And I do think my calves need more training volume. They need more sets. I do believe I've got my form in check and I think I can train them close enough to failure. And I just think 2 sets does not cut it there. But 2 sets really does cut it for me on most upper body. Thighs and hamstrings can do with a little bit more for me as well. They're just not a massive priority at the moment, given that I compete in the board shorts division. All right, that is the sets, and now let's talk about the reps before we move on to food. So one thing you'll notice is a lot of this is 5 to 10 reps or 6 to 15 reps. As a general rule, it's easier to train closer to failure with less reps, with fewer reps per set. Because if you're doing, let's say your rep range is 15 to 20, and you stop at rep number 19, are you sure that was your failure point? Like, could you have gotten another rep? Could you have gotten that 20th rep? If I ask you, what's your 18 rep max on tricep pushdown? That's a really hard thing for you to find, isn't it? Whereas if we operate in these lower rep ranges as a bit of a general guideline or rule, then it's much, much easier for us to get reliably close to failure, if not all the way to failure. This is something, again, that I would not have been open to towards the start of my lifting because I really felt like certain exercises lended themselves well or better to higher rep ranges. Like, for example, a leg extension. If someone told me to do sets of 5 to 10 there, I would have said, oh no, that's way too heavy. My knees are not going to be happy with that. But as I've matured in my training philosophy and journey, I really have noticed that if there's an exercise which you can't do in the low reps, it's probably just not a good exercise, if I'm being honest with you. And so that's a bit of a personal opinion. Yes, the research shows anywhere between 5 and 30 reps will lead to roughly equivalent muscle growth as long as you train close enough to failure. Remember, that's the key here, right? Training close enough to failure and then doing that enough times, enough sets repeatedly, and just being as consistent with it as you absolutely possibly can. And I just believe that it's easier to reliably get to failure in those lower rep ranges rather than the higher rep ranges. Now let's talk food. There is no way that you are going to add 20 kilos of muscle without eating enough food, without being in a calorie surplus. I used to constantly wonder why I would always lose weight and then feel flat and then have some bad training sessions in a row, and then I would really try and force feed myself for a few days and really try and plow down as much food as possible, and then I'd get sick and then I'd undereat for a couple of days, and the process would repeat itself over and over and over and over again. And the one thing that I never wanted to do, I just never wanted to track my calories, and I've since realized it's because I was avoiding the one thing I needed to do, because I almost didn't want to look at, I didn't want the personal accountability of knowing how many calories I actually wasn't eating. I sort of in a way liked saying, oh, it's just my metabolism, I'm just a skinny guy, I just really struggle to gain weight. Whereas now, once I've started tracking my calories, I know exactly how much food I need to eat to gain weight. Is it easy? It's not always easy, especially putting down 3,500, 4,000 calories. It's not always easy, but at least you know what you need to do in order to gain the weight that you want to gain. Again, the truth is, like, I had a pretty good physique before I ever even thought about tracking a single calorie in my life, but it's definitely something which has taken me really to that next level. And so if I was starting all over again, trying to get as jacked as possible, as fast as possible, I would be tracking my calories from day one. That's the video. I hope you got some value from it. If you would like more information on my coaching program, I help guys just like you build muscle, lose fat. Go to the first link in the description. I'll see you again tomorrow.